Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Special thank you to all the new subscribers. I hope to do these cases justice. Today it's a seat of your pants day, so I've got wet hair and I'm just going. Hopefully I won't have a lot of edits or anything, because today is the Chad Daybell Probable Cause hearing day 2. I reviewed all of yesterday's hearing that was televised. There was a few times that the audio was missing, but otherwise I'm going to give you a recap, a full recap, and hopefully not a lot of sidebar stuff. So let's plow into it. Yesterday, Monday, August 3rd, 2020, Chad Daybell is in court for a preliminary hearing. It's known as a probable cause hearing. Okay, let me break it down for you, because a lot of people are like, is that all they have? Listen. They're just trying to show that there's enough evidence to proceed to trial. Okay, so you have what's known as elements of a crime, all right, and you want to show you have we call it prima facie case. It's a Latin word that means on its face that there's enough to go forward. So the state lays out the evidence that proves just the basic elements for the crimes that are charged. It's almost like a poker game. They're not going to lay all their cards on the table. They're just going to lay out enough cards that makes it to go to the next round. Now, having said that, discovery is the process where both sides show all the evidence. They have to share the evidence. Some states are full discovery states. My state is a complete discovery state. You're not allowed to have any surprises at trial, okay? So discovery has and is going down. However, what's not necessarily discoverable is the way your legal tactics, the way you're going to proceed. You're not going to want to show every one of your cards before trial. So please don't think that the state doesn't have a case here. Don't think that the state doesn't have more, or the defense, obviously, because they're just cross-examining witnesses here. But don't think that this is the whole entire case. This is a probable cause hearing, guys. This isn't a trial. So let me say that for all the comments I saw everywhere yesterday about the weakness of what they were seeing, all they're doing is you've got elements of a crime charged, and you're just going to say it meets this element, it meets this element, it meets this element, it meets its element, let's move forward. And they won't necessarily be explaining it to the layperson. So now let's go into it. So we got the parties. You got Chad Daybell. You've got the counsel for Chad Daybell is John Pryor, and the district attorney is Rob Wood. So the state yesterday starts by putting Detective Hermosillo on the stand, and he walks him through his interaction with Chad Daybell and to get evidence into the record. This is called like laying a foundation. Also, the defense attorney is being a very big stickler. Even though the preliminary hearings has lax rules, he's being a stickler about wanting the foundation laid. When did you get that piece of evidence? What was the time? He's getting this particulars. In trial, foundation has to be completely laid. This isn't trial, it's pre-trial. So Detective Hermosillo performs a welfare check on JJ at Lori Vala's townhouse apartment. Let's just call it a townhouse apartment. They're townhouses, but they're apartments. So he knocks on the door and Alex Cox answers, and the detective asks, is Lori home? Because they're looking for JJ, and they know Lori's the mother. And he asks if JJ's home. And according to Detective Alex Cox, looked at Mr. Daybell, who was there at the house at the time, the day the welfare check went down, and didn't answer the question. So then Detective Hermosillo asked Alex Cox again, and then Alex allegedly said, paraphrase, he's with Kay in Louisiana. Kay being Kay Woodcock, all right? So the detective asked for Lori's phone number, but Alex said he didn't have Lori's phone number. He speaks with Chad Daybell. The detective then speaks with Chad Daybell, and he asks him, when was the last time you saw this child, JJ? Lori's not here. When was the last time you saw JJ? And allegedly, Chad Daybell said he last saw JJ in October of 2019 in apartment 107. Side note, we know that he was actually dead by October 2019. So what is Chad doing? That's a side note. But anyway, so keep that in mind. Lie. All right? Or misrepresentation, misremembering. Okay, so Chad also allegedly stated to the detective that he didn't have Lori Vala's phone number at this point. So Daybell allegedly told Detective Hermosillo that JJ was with his grandparents and that he didn't have the cell phone number for the grandparents. So Detective Hermosillo also said that Chad, he stated that he felt like I was accusing him of something because he was just being queried about the whereabouts of JJ because he was there doing a welfare check. That was his job. When he gets a call out for a welfare check, you go there, you knock on the door, you ask to see the child, you see the child or whatever. You see a picture of the child wherever, that date, it's done. But Chad felt like he was being accused of something. Guilty conscience munch, guys? Okay, so Detective Hermosillo said on the stand that he found this suspicious. And he asked Chad, quote, "How do you know Lori Vallow?" And the answer was allegedly, "I know her through Alex Cox." Not, we're lovers and we're going to be married or we're married. I know her through Alex Cox. Detective Hermosillo found all this suspicious, so he called for backup. Now keep in mind, he's a detective that's just going out for a welfare check. Usually these are standard. People get into scraps with their spouse or something. One party has custody that weekend and they feel something's awry. The kid hasn't answered their cell phone, and so ex-wife makes police go for a welfare check, and it's nothing. It's nothing, and they don't wear a body cam for it. That's typical. So anyway, they move on to the exhibits. Because see, all they're doing is laying these basic elements. And they're not going to say, this is the element of this. They're just moving from one thing to another. So they move on to the exhibits. They move on to the pictures that Yellowstone entered into evidence. And I think it's State Exhibit 8. It's a picture of JJ, Tylee, and Alex from September 8, 2019. And a lot of we're not seeing these exhibits, by the way, because some of these exhibits are going to be quite graphic. So we, as just a listener of these live cams, due to Corona, are not seeing the exhibits. So then there's another state exhibit. It's September 22nd of 2019 of JJ sitting on a couch, which was recovered from Lori's iCloud account. So he was allegedly alive on September 22nd. Also because I'm sure there's metadata. They didn't get into the metadata, but if you have something from an iCloud account and it's a picture and you look into the picture, the metadata will show when the picture was taken. So that's when they believe the last time that anybody took a picture of JJ Vallow, or at least any of these folks did. September 22nd. So Detective Hermosillo talks about looking for any proof of life for JJ Vallow. And he also noted that Tylee was not thought to be missing at this time. She wasn't the main concern at this moment. Detective Hermosillo stated that there were no photos located of Tylee after September 8th, 2019. And he used NCMEC and the National Missing and Exploited Children. They also look and see if there's pictures of them anywhere else, because then that could be for proof of life. And no photos of JJ Vallow were found after September 22nd, 2019. No verifiable sightings of these kids after those respective dates. Example, okay, of some of the things they found when they did a search warrant at Lori Vallow's residence. Only a half-empty bottle of JJ's meds were in the apartment. These were the meds he took for his special needs. And there also were no clothes found in apartment 175. So after searching the apartments, because they got a search warrant, they saw a rental agreement, allegedly. They saw a rental agreement, and so then they go ahead and got a search warrant for the storage unit. So then they went in their storage unit and they tried to see if there was any evidence of life for the kids, what was in the storage unit. So again, we're not going to go into that. It's just laying the facts, the basics. Then Detective Hermosillo said that he was the affiant, that's the person who swears under oath, in the Child Protective Act, and that's the one that pertained to Lori being instructed to bring her minor kids to the Rexburg Police Department. And mind you, by then she'd legged it, meaning she'd legged it out of town, right? Because after they did the welfare check and they started, coming for her, knocking on her door twice that day, they legged it allegedly the next day. So Detective Hermosillo went to Kauai and he personally served Lori on January 25th, 2000. He was also present and observed a search warrant on her vehicle in Kauai. He observed some items taken from the vehicle. He said that nothing indicated that kids were in the vehicle or resided in the residence they had there in Princeville. Again, laying a foundation that she didn't have those kids. The kids were not there with her in Kauai. Lori was then arrested in Hawaii for desertion of her minor children, so she was notified of her charges. I noticed that in the humorous, in my opinion, filings from her attorney, there was some question about notice of service of process and things like that. And so I guess that knocks that whole concept out of the park, where Means was allegedly assuming that Lori wasn't properly served with the documents when Detective Hermosillo was the one that was the affiant, and he also served her with the documents. So she was notified of her charges, and also Chad Daybell was in the court for her court appearances in Hawaii. So as her husband, he's sitting there, he's notified of her charges as well. He's sitting right there in court. Okay, so we're setting the knowledge factor part up. You know, he knows she's got children. He knows they're missing. He knows she's been arrested for not producing them. That's some knowledge, okay? Due to a warrant on June 9th, 2020, Detective Hermosillo made contact with the Daybell's son, who answered the door. He had a search warrant for the property. It's what he told the son, allegedly, and I think another son was also there. He said that Chad sat in the kitchen, spoke with his attorney, must have been on the phone because the attorney wasn't at the house, and then Chad was told he was free to leave if he wanted. In other words, Chad was not in custody, because if Chad's in custody, different rules apply. Chad wasn't in custody, so they're there. They've got a search warrant for the house and the property. Chad, you're free to leave. And so Chad opted to go and sit in his vehicle, and the vehicle was facing west. All right. So a demonstrative aerial photograph of the Daybell property was shown to the witness. Detective Hermosillo said that Chad Daybell was on his phone in the car, in the driver's seat, and looking over his right shoulder, repeatedly, pretty intently over his right shoulder, towards the pond or towards the area, okay? Detective Hermosillo said that from the orientation that he's describing, one could see the pond and the evidence recovery team, okay, that's now spanning the grounds, who are working the pond area on the Daybell property, marking off and gridding different areas, all right? Cadaver dogs were also working that area, so you got to imagine they're also probably signaling. Some dogs signal by sitting, some dogs signal by barking. So yeah, it was probably pretty dang exciting, and the entire backyard was being worked by cadaver dogs, and an area of interest was found by a tree. So allegedly at this point, you know, Chad's sitting there repeatedly looking over his right shoulder. So we're starting the knowledge factor here, or the what did he know, when did he know it? So, okay, this part's going to get graphic, so you know, you might want to hit the pause if you can't hear graphic text testimony, but Detective Hermosillo stated that sod was pulled up and topsoil, and that remains were found when 3 large white flat rocks were unearthed, and thin wood paneling was underneath these rocks, and that he smelled the smell of decomposition when the paneling was removed. Then they saw a black plastic bag with a round object protruding from the dirt. The crown of the head was protruding through the dirt. A slit was made, and a white plastic bag was under the black plastic bag, and the remains had brown human hair. A small body was wrapped in black plastic, was covered in duct tape. The remains were taken to the coroner at the Madison Memorial Morgue. Detective Hermosillo, he also assisted a traffic stop for Chad Daybell, and I do believe, side note, this is when Chad allegedly went to bolt from the property after the bodies were starting to be dug up. That's my assumption of it. That's when he was taken into custody. Detective Hermosillo also stated that he assisted in digging up a dog and a cat from a pet cemetery on the property, and Detective Hermosillo said he himself did not dig up the entire pet cemetery. And there, if you recall that there was some allegation that Chad had shot, or he texted he had shot a raccoon, and that it was really just a raccoon and all this stuff. So no mention of a raccoon, but he also admitted he did not dig up the entire pet cemetery. In another location on the property, a mass of burnt flesh and charred bone was unearthed. On June 10th, the evidence recovery team excavated a mass of burnt flesh and bone. Detective Hermosillo spoke of finding a melted green bucket that flesh had been inside, and also a partial human skull. On a side note, one would wonder why it was a partial human skull. Was it maybe because she had a gunshot wound? And I have no idea. He then followed the coroner to the Ada Boise coroner's office, and they basically are demonstrating chain of custody. So they'll talk about the bodies were sent here, and then the bodies were sent here, and I went with the bodies, and the bodies were the same, in the same state. They'll have to show chain of evidence and the chain of custody to make sure you know that nobody tampered with anything and nothing was ever left in a detective's car or something like that. Shades of alleged OJ. How they would put something in the, allegedly something. Well, they put it in the trunk of the car. No. The chain of custody is being demonstrated here, so that's again laying a foundation. June 11th, the county coroner's office observed the autopsies of the two remains. One was the body of a small child in red pajamas, a red pajama shirt and pants, wearing black Skechers socks, and a white and blue blanket was with it. He noted that the body had duct tape on the head, the arms, and the feet. Detective Hermosillo then said that he recognized J.J. Vallow from his review and his many views of photos and videos while he was looking for this child, through the end of 2019, and that the body had the same style of haircut, shaved sides and longer on the top that was seen in the later photos of JJ. And he stated that almost like a ball of duct tape was over his hands and arms. So he said JJ's hands and arms were like this, and that it was almost like a ball of duct tape. And I think he also said once they took that off, there was duct tape around his hands. His ankles were bound with duct tape. He had duct tape on his face from his chin to his forehead. He was covered in duct tape. And my question on a side note is, would you have to duct tape an unconscious child in a place where they would struggle? No. So that tells me that this child, when he was duct taped, was conscious, in my opinion. Regarding the other sets of remains and the melted green bucket, the charred flesh and bone was taken from Chad Daybell's property to the medical examiner's office, and they established chain of custody for all these, for both the bodies and where they went. So then we open up to cross-examination of Detective Hermosillo by John Pryor. They're allowed to cross-examine on the issues that were brought up on direct examination, and that's usually limiting their scope unless the direct examination opens a door. So John Pryor is earning his money. I want to say that. I found that he did a fair job. I found he did a good job representing his client. You don't have to like him. But don't you want Chad Daybell to have a fair trial? Because if he doesn't get a fair trial, then he can just turn around and it'll get overruled on appeal. He needs to have a fair trial, and this is a preliminary hearing, but he's got a good attorney. So Detective Hermosillo is cross-examined by John Pryor and is asked if November 26, 2019, in the early morning was his initial contact with Chad Daybell. And he's then queried... he then queries Detective Hermosillo as to why Detective Hermosillo is not wearing a body cam. All right. And he said basically that body cams aren't commonly worn by detectives whenever he was doing just a simple welfare check, basically. So Attorney Pryor is making a big, huge deal that the detective didn't wear a body cam for the simple welfare check on a child. And keep in mind, at this point of November 26, 2019, no one knew that there was suspected foul play involving children. Detective Hermosillo was asked as to whom else he spoke to in the entire investigation and who else was recorded. Now, mind you, they know in discovery they already have the answers to this question. But he's gonna, he's gonna cross-examine him, make some points, and get him pinned, because then later they can say in the preliminary hearing you said so. So then Detective Hermosillo admits he spoke with Melanie Boudreaux. He admits to speaking with Melanie Gibb. He admits to recording those conversations. Again, by this time, you know something's suspicious. So then you do want to make sure you have it on tape. That's my opinion. By the defendant's questions, the defendant's attorney's questions, by the defendant's attorney's questions, one can imply that the detective's memory may not be accurate because it was not recorded on the body cam. So it's almost like saying, since you know what, we're just supposed to rely on your recollection, Detective Hermosillo, you didn't have your body cam on. By the inference of Pryor's questions, in my opinion, the defendant's trying to make it seem as if it's possible that JJ went to school on September 23rd. Here's the question in paraphrased. Did you contact JJ's school? And are you aware of a statement that JJ went to school on September 23rd? And Detective Hermosillo said that the investigation initially showed that it looked like he might have, but then it was absolutely not the case. So he knocked that out. Nope, he didn't go to school on that date. That's what he was trying to say. The detective was asked about search warrants, and they sought search warrants for the 3 townhomes, apartments, looking for the whereabouts of JJ Vallow. He's questioned about Alex Cox's apartment, which is apartment 107. Detective Hermosillo said it was vacant. He was asked about apartment 175, and the attorney, in my opinion, implied that Lori and Alex were living together. He kept mentioning in this thing how close they were, or asking questions about closeness. It was kind of weird. Apartment 174 was Melanie Boudreaux's apartment, so those were all under search warrant. The detective said he had no information that they, Alex Cox and Lori Vallow, lived together at the same time. Maybe they did. Heck, this whole case is so damn crazy. Pryor asked questions implying that one cannot see the pond from where Chad was parked when they did the search warrant and they started digging and the cadaver dogs went, and that Chad was allegedly in the car looking, sketchily over his shoulder and watching things. Pryor was kind of implying that you can't even see the pond from that location. So Attorney Pryor then asked about the pet cemetery on the Daybell property and whether there was a headstone for a dog, some kind of a statue or something, and Hermosillo said he did notice that. Attorney Pryor also asked about a well-established fire pit nearby. I don't know what they were trying to say. I don't know. Again, this doesn't need to be brought out in evidence. And just because the defense asks about it doesn't mean the state has to come out and pull this out in a prelim. But more than likely, you do like you would go to the fire pit and you look and see if there was any kind of adipose tissue or fat or any evidence that a human body was buried there. So I guess he was trying to sow the seeds of doubt that a human body was buried at this established fire pit. He asked the detective about whether there was a residence across the street from the Daybell residence, and he answered that there was. And he seemingly tried to establish through the detective that burning flesh smells distinctive. Implication is that if a body had been burned there, a neighbor could have smelled it, right, or would have smelled it. And assuming that a layperson would know what a burning body smells like. Yes, it might be distinctive. But if you've never smelled a burning dead body, how would you know that's what it was versus a barbecue? I hate to be gross, but okay. If you smell decomp, just regular old decomp, it's a very pungent, horrible, gut-churning smell, and you'll remember it. You'll be like, oh my God, that's decomp. Gotcha? I guess I've never smelled burning flesh, but I guess if you smell burning flesh, it's got, again, another very distinct smell, and you'll be like, oh my God, that's burning flesh. Burning human flesh. But if you've never smelled burning human flesh, how are you going to know that's what it is? So the detective said or agreed that there were 5 residences surrounding the Daybell home. He also established that there were probably about 50 people on the scene during the excavations. So, okay. Then we move on because, again, the state's just laying certain things, just getting a foundation in. They're not trying to tell a story. They're just trying to prove that there's enough evidence to move forward for a case. Detective Ron Ball from the Rexburg Police Department is called to the stand by the state. He testifies that the remains of the 2 bodies were found on the Chad Daybell property and that the remains were taken to the Ada County Coroner's office. And he's just limited to identifying and authenticating the chain of custody of the evidence. So then David Stubb, the police detective sergeant of the detective division, was called to the stand. And he met Lori, and their interaction is recorded on Stubbs' body cam. So for the welfare checks. So the audio and the video is played for the court, but we only get to hear the audio, and that is plenty. Okay, so we can't see it, but boy, can we hear it. And Ball spoke to Lori Vallow. And they also say that Alex Cox is there, you know. And Lori says, you gotta listen to the audio, but I'm just going to give you like a summary. Lori says that JJ's with my friend Melanie. Okay, so that's what she had said. And quote, "One of my brothers is trying to kill me. My husband is trying to kill me for the life insurance money." So like that's why she was trying to keep JJ away from everybody. Okay. Projection much, guys? Let's continue. Lori, and okay, I'm going to say it. Lori sounds butthurt regarding money through this thing. She is getting more and more hyper, more and more defensive. On the body cam video, one can hear her mention her woes, that Kay Woodcock got Charles Vallow's insurance money. Quotes like, "Kay has no legal right, so I don't have to tell her where he's at." That kind of comment. You know, she got all the money and here I am with the special needs child. That sort of statement, you know. Money, money, money. This is what she's worried about. Not the child, not producing the child. When asked about Chad Daybell, okay, mind you, this is all on audio. Lori acts like Chad is her brother's friend. Oh, he's just my brother's friend. Not her lover and her future husband. I mean, this is the stuff Lori is telling the police, and this is the stuff on the audio, captured on audio. So this goes into evidence. In a second body cam video, a detective is requesting that Lori get a hold of who she said had JJ because Melanie Gibb is not answering her phone. You know, so to get a hold of her, since Melanie's not picking up the phone, so Lori tells the police that Melanie Gibb is at Frozen with JJ. She's at Frozen 2 with JJ. So this is the second contact that day. You know, and she's not happy camper that they keep knocking at the door. You can tell she's becoming more and more frustrated. And we now know they legged it the next day. They took off, you know. Meanwhile, the state, so this is laying evidence of knowledge and what Lori's firm position was and her lies on these dates. It's in the record now. Meanwhile, state asks questions about a later search warrant that was obtained for all the suspects' Google electronic records. They also talked about the CAST system and on the way they gathered all this analytics. So anyway, using phone numbers, email addresses, etc., the search warrant was served on Google and the results were retrieved. They talk about Exhibit 16, the Google Analytics. Alex Cox's location data is put or given over to the police in an Excel spreadsheet type thing of over 26,000 pages, guys. Okay? So they had to prepare summaries. Obviously, they had to prepare some summaries. And this was just from the end of the year, from, say, like September to December. 26,000 pages. So they prepared summaries from the data received, and they were showing some of this stuff in the exhibits that we couldn't see. So, and I'm sure if you were to assume they're showing that, yeah, this is showing that he's here on this property at this time and here, and they were pointing at things. They didn't say it, so we really don't know. But again, laying the evidence out, putting the evidence forth, laying a foundation. So on cross-examination, Pryor gets the detective to agree that this is just showing that the phone is simply a device belonging to Alex Cox. Doesn't mean that Alex Cox was actually there at these different locations at these different times. It just means a phone belonging to Alex Cox was there. And he was like, yeah, sure, that's what it means, because that is what it means. So then Wynn Hill a Brigham Young employee is called regarding student employment, because you hear on the audio tapes that Lori is telling them that Tylee's at Brigham Young. Okay? But guess what? Tylee Ryan was never enrolled or even applied at Brigham Young University. So, because Windhill has the ability to access all the records, they keep data on everybody that's ever gone to school there, is in school, applied for it, etc., etc. And she's not under Tylee Ryan, not under Tylee Cox, not under, Tylee Vallow, not under any of the names is Tylee or birth date ever been a student or even applied to school. And then we get the star witness of the day, Melanie Gibb. Oh, Lord have mercy, guys. Buckle up. I suggest you watch this part if you're going to watch anything having to do with this prelim. She tells of how she met Chad Daybell 3 or 4 years ago in Utah. She met Lori Vallow in October 2018 in Mesa, Arizona, and she verifies that Lori Vallow had 2 children, JJ and Tylee. Okay. On September 19, 2019, Melanie said that she went to visit Lori Vallow and that the visit lasted until Monday, September 23rd, 2019. That's an important date, guys. Okay, so she said she left at 9:30 a.m. in the morning. And then Melanie Gibb said she had gone there to spend the weekend for an event because they were doing a podcast, and that she stayed with Lori Vallow in her townhome. Now you got to remember, you got Lori Vallow's got a townhome there, Alex Cox has a townhome there, and Melanie Boudreau has a townhome there. They all had townhomes, 2 of which were right next to each other, 174 and 175. So she said that she had witnessed Lori and Chad, even that weekend, being affectionate with each other, even during that trip. During that weekend, Lori told Melanie Gibb that Tylee was at BYU at the Idaho campus because Tylee wasn't there over the weekend. JJ was there during the visit, at least until September 22nd, all right? She, being Melanie Gibb, said that Lori had been complaining that JJ was acting with a lot of energy, knocked over a photo of Jesus, he'd been climbing on the countertops, and that Lori told Melanie she wanted JJ to go and live with Kay. All right? This is like September 22nd. She wants him to go and live with Kay. If only you'd let him go and live with Kay. So anyway, November 26, 2019, Melanie's with her boyfriend in another state. And in my opinion, this boyfriend is part and parcel of the reason why all this stuff isn't being pinned on Melanie Gibb. Because it almost, to me, seems like Melanie Gibb was being positioned to be almost like a fall person for all this stuff. But then she ended up having a boyfriend. It's another person. And then kind of he gives her, I wouldn't say an alibi, but then she's with him doing things. So November 26, 2019, Melanie's with her boyfriend in another state. She receives a call from Chad Daybell, his cell phone. And now, mind you, he's allegedly sitting in the driveway or at the house as they're doing the welfare check. So she receives a call from Chad Daybell. The Rexburg police are going to call you. Don't pick up. I'm paraphrasing. Then Lori calls her about 2 hours later or so and says the same thing and asks her to lie and tell the police that JJ is with her at Frozen 2 and to take pictures of random children to prove of life of JJ. She doesn't say that. She just asks her to do it. So Melanie Gibb admitted on the stand that she lied for Lori. Okay? So the Nate Eaton interview isn't 100% accurate. However, she wasn't under oath for the Nate Eaton interview. And remember, they also went to a screenshot of written testimony or written statement on the Nate Eaton interview, and that's during this part. So Melanie Gibb admits she lied for Lori. She lied to the police. She told Officer Pilar, when they called, she told them that she had JJ. Oh yeah, I had him, but he's back with Lori. So she essentially was throwing that ball back into Lori's court. Oh yeah, I had him, but Lori's got him now. Because she was like, So Melanie Gibb said that she didn't see JJ the morning that she left Lori's home. So here's the bombshell, guys. Melanie Gibb then went on to record a conversation with Lori and Chad on her phone on December 8th, 2019. So Melanie, in my opinion, sitting there with her boyfriend, all this is hitting her. He's giving her good advice that she's taking. So she decides to record the conversation on her own accord and not at the suggestion of the police, because if it was done at the suggestion of the police, then all of a sudden we've got other issues. It wasn't at the suggestion of the police. It was more than likely at the suggestion of her boyfriend. So she calls Chad's phone and she records the conversation. This is Exhibit 19, and I highly recommend you to listen to this call because these fools put it on speakerphone. So Melanie, and I'm going to sort of paraphrase some of this because I didn't sit there and do word for word on this. I was in a hurry. Melanie asked Lori, remember when you told me JJ was going to Kay's house and then you told me he went there? What happened? See, because mind you, by December 9th, everybody's looking for these kids. And so Melanie's trying to find out where the heck's JJ. So Lori says, well, I had to move him somewhere because of her actions. Her is Kay, by the way. And Mel says, was Kay trying to kidnap him? And Lori said, yeah. And Mel says, is there a reason I should be in danger? Like, why should I be in danger? And then Lori says, people are after me. And then Chad chimes in because they're on speakerphone. I love it. It proves knowledge, guys. It proves knowledge of everything Lori's saying. And it also, in a way, if you're not speaking against what Lori's saying, it proves agreement. It proves agreement, guys. So here we're getting into the conspiracy. So all the people that are like, it didn't show anything. Yes, it did. You don't understand. Just give it time. All right, so is there a reason I should be in danger? Why should I be in danger? Lori, people are after me. Chad chimes in. If you know, if you know, you're in a bad position. And then he talks about, like, essentially, you're going to keep you, this is not knowing keeps you protected. Protected from what? What harm are you in? You know that there's harm? Knowledge, okay, folks? So Mel says, I was wondering, why didn't you tell the police he was with me? And Lori says something about the whole family, her whole family working against me and with her being Kay Woodcock. And then Melanie says, well, is JJ safe? And Lori says, he's safe and happy. And so Melanie says, are you afraid not to tell me that I could be in danger? How can that hurt me? And then Lori says, well, I'm not telling anybody so that nobody has to say. So Melanie says, I have a question. I asked Al, and I do believe Al might be the brother, okay, or a family member. I asked Al if I wanted to know, and at this point the audio cuts out, but and she said, Al said that I did not want to know, and that he couldn't be found. What do her family members know, right? So Lori said, I don't want Al to know. So nobody has to be worried about it or questioned about it. So it's implying that there's something awry, okay? So Mel says, are you ever gonna come back to society again? And so Lori says, I will do whatever the Lord needs me to do every day. Mel says, maybe when they're done chasing you, maybe, will JJ come out? And then Lori says, it's a ridiculous thing. They're working with her, Kay, in some dark capacity. The police are working with her. Dark capacity. So here we are, the dark and light, and Chad's sitting right there on this conference call, or on this call that's on speakerphone. So Mel says, has she threatened you at all? She said she'd come and take him? I'm worried for you guys. And Lori said, I know exactly where he is. He's perfectly fine. Mind you, Chad is on the speakerphone. All right? So Melanie starts sharing scripture, and Lori starts debating religious doctrine with Melanie to justify her actions. And, like, what was so-and-so back in, in LDS religion required to do? And Mel says, he had to go and flee. And then Lori said, what was Moroni required to do? And then Mel was like, he had to hide. So she's like using this almost like a brainwashing technique to get her back under the spell of the religious, this is a religious thing to go and hide, when you're being oppressed and terrorized and stuff. So anyway, Melanie counters this and tells them both that God doesn't work in darkness. So then Lori says, sometimes you have to hide in the cavity of a rock for your own life's safety. The darkness of Kay. You already know he's dark. Lori says that Kay changed the beneficiary designation for Charles Vallow. Projection much? Okay, so now Kay is dark. Kay is the bad guy. Okay, and so mind you, who's sitting right there? Chad Daybell throughout this whole darn thing. The dark, all this crap, all right? So sensing Melanie's doubt, Lori challenges Melanie's intention for the phone call. She calls her controversial. Seems like you're being controversial, and accuses her of possibly taping it for the police. But boy, she just keeps on going though. Keeps it on speakerphone, keeps on going. Melanie says, if you really love me, you wouldn't have told the police that JJ was with me. And she says, I think you were tricked by Satan and this isn't God's plan. And then Lori's like, you know me, Mel. You know me. And so Chad, listening this whole effing time, I want to testify. He's going to have a testimonial. I want to testify. My sister-in-law has the same theories. My own children were there. They testified. I begged her, meaning Tammy, to go to the doctors. Her heart was failing her and passed away. My kids were there 20 minutes of her passing. All these conspiracy theories make me sick. I knew my life had 2 segments. I want to testify. You know what I mean? So nobody was talking about Tammy here, guys. Nobody was. These guilty people are projecting like crazy and essentially not challenging. What do you mean by light and dark? What do you mean? Yeah, it's all there. Chad and Lori are like this. Come on, guys. At this point, they're like this. They're thinking alike. All right? So Lori gets real super snotty. Ooh, she gets snotty. And she says, sorry I included you in these teachings. I wish you didn't have the knowledge you have. Ooh, in a way, in a side way, it's like, I wish you didn't know what you know. Even though she's allegedly talking about the religious teachings they've shared with her, it's threatening, okay? So Melanie, this is the part I laughed. I know you shouldn't. Melanie calls them Cora whores. And I don't know anything about the side LDS Mormon religion, but there's something about, I guess, like somebody who did, I don't know if it was sexual things, but I guess a person was named Cora whore, so she calls them a bunch of Cora whores. And this ticks. Oh my God, Lori gets so pissed off that she's essentially calling him a Cora whore. But I just thought, I got a chuckle. I got such a chuckle. And then, so I want to talk about what did the hearing today prove, essentially, other than laying foundation, which I've already gone over. All right. And again, we're not done. This is day one. One, that Chad knows Lori had 2 underage children. Because at different points they were trying to say, well, Chad didn't even know she had underage children. He knew she had underage children. Chad knows he and Lori asked Melanie to lie about the whereabouts of JJ, who was deemed missing by police. It's reiterated in the call. Boom, bang, bang. That makes the knowledge right there. For the charges he's charged with currently, okay? That made it right there. It's on the phone. It's on the call. He knows that that Melanie said, essentially, he asked me to lie, and he's sitting there not saying, no, I didn't. And they'll argue about being Cora whores, all right? But they're not going to argue about asking her to lie. So Chad knows what Lori is telling Melanie Gibb, and he's in agreement with her. He's sitting there on a speakerphone, not challenging what Lori's saying. He's agreeing with her. Chad knows something is fishy or thinks something is fishy about his own wife's demise. Ha! Chad says, if Melanie knows where the kids were, it could bring her harm. What harm? That's some kind of some kind of knowledge, okay? Then it's now come out that the bodies were found on the Daybell property. That's the latest foundation. And that Chad, and also that they legged it to Hawaii. That's latest foundation. And that both Chad and Lori believe and rating people as light and dark. So that's all come in so far. That's a lot, guys. So for people who are going wah wah wah, we're laying enough of a foundation that you can lay some cards down saying some of these elements are getting, you know, met for the charges as they stand now, and I'm keeping some of the rest of it close to my chest. So when it comes out at trial, you don't know what my legal theory is going to be. You don't know what my tactics are going to be. Do you want to go and like lay everything out at the prelim so that they know exactly what you're going to say and they can come and counter you? No, they're doing an excellent job. Both the state and even the defense attorney is doing an excellent job. So I hope you enjoyed this summary. I'm sorry that it's shooting from the hip, you know, hair not done. But, you know, today is a busy day, and I hope you have an excellent one. Take care.